Primal Mana is a rare commodity in Burning Crusade, and one of the most popular farming spots for it, and in the game in general, is Mana Wraiths. And today, we're going all in on this spot. That's right, we're gonna be farming this particular spot in Netherstorm for 10 hours in the classic Burning Crusade beta, to find out exactly how much gold one could expect to get from this farm. So like we say for every farm video we do, this isn't supposed to be an accurate representation of real results on live servers, because one, your class and gear will significantly affect your kill speed, and more importantly, this spot is going to be packed with players on the live servers. Unfortunately, that's not really possible to accurately benchmark because it depends on the time of the day on your particular server and also how many layers are active. This is just a benchmark of how much gold you could make if there was zero competition, and then you can scale things up or down accordingly. With that said, let's get into the video. As is common with this series, we're gonna be starting with 0 gold and an empty inventory with just the absolute necessary commodities. At the end of the 10 hours, whatever gold amount and content of these bags shows, that's going to be how much we've made in total. So let's just get into the farm and I'll explain the rest as we go. We're gonna be giving an estimated value to the primals we farm here by looking at prices on a fresh TBC private server. This is just for the sake of making this video, since this is the beta and there's no real economy on the beta. So if you're watching this after the game is released and you want an accurate gold estimate for this spot, just input the prices for Primal Mana from your own server at the end in the results section. So as mentioned earlier, we're gonna be killing Mana Wraiths around K3 in Netherstorm. The fastest way to get here, by the way, is probably to just fly to K3. If you have an epic flying mount, I'd recommend flying straight here because the flight path takes some weird detours, but if not, just take the flight path. Incidentally, because this is so close to Area 52, this is perfect to restock on food, water, or arrows, and repair your gear or vendor stuff when you're farming here. So, Mana Wraiths. Those guys have a long loot table, but what we're most interested about today is Motes of Mana, which turn into Primal Mana, which is among the most sought after resource in Burning Crusade, and this spot is one of the most popular ones to farm these, so we're gonna be putting it to the test today. One thing to note here is that there's actually a lot of crevices around this place, separating the small islands which contain the mobs we're after. And unfortunately, if you fall in one of those, you're gonna have a hard time to go up because there isn't an awful lot of ways to go up. For this reason, I would highly recommend having a flying mount here, or even better, being a druid. We've discussed in previous videos the efficiency of being a druid for these outside world farms, with the ability to instantly shapeshift into your flight form and quickly reach the next enemy. Unfortunately, we're playing a hunter today, so we're gonna have to stick with our flying mount. Speaking of hunters, one thing I noticed with these mobs is that they're actually immune to Hunter's Mark for whatever reason, which probably adds a lot to the kill time, so I don't think Hunter is the best class to do this particular spot. Even the old method of pulling mobs to you or sending your pet to them is pretty slow because of the crevices in this place. Be it your pet or the mob you're attacking, they're gonna end up pathing all the way down the cliff and then all the way up, which adds a lot of time to the kill time, but unfortunately, sometimes you just have to do that. By the way, the crevices that I talked about have a lot of patrolling earth elementals I noticed, which had the side effect of incidentally provide us with motes of earth. Those are among the most common motes types in the world, so I don't expect them to be very valuable, but it's better than nothing, I guess. Also, about this spot in general, it actually feels like there's a very decent amount of mobs, enough that you'd never have to wait for respawns. Unfortunately, this place is very linear, so you're gonna have to run back to where you started every time you go through it. But in general, I never ran out of mobs, and even if I did, it seems like there's another spawn point for those mobs not very far from here, so there's that to consider. However, I am currently doing this on the beta, and there was barely anyone here for those 10 hours of me farming. In fact, I only saw competition about 2 times in total, and those were just players questing around here, so they didn't have a flying mount and they couldn't really compete. But this place feels like even if there was 1 or 2 more players here competing with you, you'd still have a decent amount of mobs spawning, especially considering those are actually part of a quest, so I assume dynamic spawning does apply to them. But yeah, even then, I would still expect a lot of competition here because this spot is actually pretty popular. But I will say that it's day and night compared to Elemental Plateau, which we also did a 10-hour farming video about, and you should definitely check that if you're interested. But for Elemental Plateau, I concluded that that spot would probably be completely undoable for pretty much anyone, because as soon as one player would show up, I'd have to wait upwards of 30 seconds to a minute to see mobs respawning. Here, however, the mobs were abundant, and I would say that this place could easily accommodate 2 to 3 players farming at once. And with dynamic spawning and layering, I would say that this place is a pretty good farming spot. Let's talk professions. I did notice a couple mining nodes and herb nodes here while farming, so you could make bonus gold here by having one of those gathering professions, and obviously enchanting is really good too, because as you'll see at the end, we ended up getting quite a lot of green items that could probably be disenchanted for a good profit on the live servers, especially at launch. We also even got a couple blue items, one around the 5-hour mark and one close to the end. You could probably be getting a decent amount of gold from those if you sell them early on, but unfortunately we're on the beta and there isn't really a way to accurately tell the value of those green and blue items, so we're just gonna be vendoring them. If you're familiar with this series, I usually use a macro to automatically target the closest mob that I'm farming, mark him with Hunter's Mark, and send my pet to him to instantly know where the mob is. I did not end up using that macro too much this time around because of how bad the terrain is in this place, and also because it was quite easy to see the next mob from where I was standing. But if you're a hunter and you're farming something in general, go ahead and use this macro. Just know that in this particular spot, it's not really good because the mobs are immune to Hunter's Mark, and because half the time the pet would end up pathing for way too long to reach its target. Before we get to the results, let's talk about the mobs themselves. Those guys are between level 67 and 68, making them quite easy to kill at 70. However, they do have a mana draining ability that steals a bit of mana from you to heal them. So if you're a mana using class, be sure to interrupt that, and if you don't have an interrupt like hunters, make sure to have enough water on you to regen, because you will need it. Actually, while writing this video, I made some research on those guys and it turns out that they are actually immune to a ton of things. For hunters, it turns out that they're immune to all stings and arcane and concussive shot. For mages, they're actually immune to counterspell because it's an arcane ability, and any arcane abilities in general for the matter. So I really wouldn't do this as an arcane mage. They're also immune to starfire and moonfire apparently, so you'll have to spam wrath if you're a boomkin. So yeah, those are quite a bigger pain to deal with for many classes than I thought, so just keep that in mind. Alright, with that said, let's get to the results. As usual, I tried to keep everything in my bank and inventory to have a clear visualization of everything we got in the last 10 hours. So what you see on screen is pretty much everything we got. What we usually do for the results to get an estimate of what the primals are worth is we go check prices on a fresh TBC private server. Those servers being fresh means that it's not actually the most accurate prices we could expect to see for classic TBC, since the servers in classic TBC are not going to be fresh, but they're the closest thing we have, so we'll have to work with that for now. When the game does release, just make your own math with your own server's prices to have an accurate price. So, in our bags, as you can see, there's a lot of gray items, a lot of Motes of Mana, and also a bunch of green items. So let's start with vendoring all the gray and green items. Remember, I don't have enchanting on this character, and even if I did, I couldn't tell you how much everything would be worth accurately. So I'll just be vendoring everything, but keep in mind that if you have enchanting, it will increase your gold gain quite significantly. So after going through all the gray and green items in our bags, we ended up getting 282 raw gold, which is quite decent. Let's now move on to Motes of Mana. As you can see, there's quite a lot of them, 526 to be exact, which turned into 52.5 Primal Mana. And then I incidentally also got 10 Motes of Earth after pulling those Earth Elementals every time, so we also got 1 Primal Earth from this. So with that, that's 52.5 Primal Mana, which go around 25 gold currently on a fresh TBC private server. That's 1,312 gold for those. 1 Primal Earth, which goes for 3.5 gold, and 282 raw gold. That's a total of just shy of 1,600 gold, which turns out to be 160 gold per hour. As I said, this is based on the prices for a fresh TBC private server. The servers are not going to be fresh for classic TBC, so I assume you could easily double those values, which would equate to around 300 gold per hour, but that's just an estimate. The game is not yet out, and if you're watching this video after the game is out, go ahead and put your actual auction house prices here to get an accurate value. So conclusion, I really like this farming spot. This used to be a spot that I farmed all the way back in 2007 in original TBC to afford my flying mount. And I spent hours here farming those mobs on my warrior, so it's a lot of nostalgia. But even objectively, this spot is quite good in general. I would recommend going here in a heartbeat compared to going to Elemental Plateau. Again, I did make a couple videos on Elemental Plateau, which you should check, but the thing that we ended up discovering there is that as soon as one player starts competing with you, Elemental Plateau becomes pretty much useless. For this reason, I bet farming here would end up netting you way more gold per hour than in Elemental Plateau, and then you could just use the gold you farm here to buy Primal Air and Primal Fire instead. Way more efficient. But yeah, with that was 10 hours of farming Mana Wraiths in Netherstorm. If you found this video interesting or entertaining, please do give it a like and let me know in the comments what you'd like to see me farm next. I really like this series and we want to do way more of it at Gaming Curious, so let us know what you'd like to see. With that said, remember to subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and I'll see you guys very soon in the next video. Bye for now.